general counsel of the Council on Environment Quality in the Office of the President, and that was under Nixon and Ford, last part of Nixon, all of Ford. Then Associate Solicitor of the Interior Department for Conservation and Wildlife, and that was under Carter. And Director of the Office of Staff Attorneys in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit.
Yeah, I'm originally from Australia. I came out here in '82. Prior to that, I had taught engineering for a number of years in both Australia and Papua New Guinea. And then we transitioned over to bioengineering, which at that point was pretty big, and I got pretty heavily involved in clinical research. And when I came over here, I concentrated really on computing hardware and software, and had some jobs with companies like AMD and partnerships. And then in around the turn of the millennium, we started to get really involved in the molecular biology and understanding exactly how the human body works and how disease works. We've published a number of papers over the last 20 years explaining that chronic disease is really a product of the microbiome rather than just chance happenings.
And then the electrosmog and autoimmunity paper was published in 2016?
2016.
Yeah, excellent paper. So we're going to put that in the record so you understand.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. Yeah, my name is Renette Senham, and I am a native of Nevada County, California. And I actually had the first cell phone store in Nevada County in 1990, of all things. And I was actually at the time doing a lot of extreme adventures, including I was the first woman to cross Alaska alone in the dead of winter, which I filmed for National Geographic. I was actually looking forward to the day that we would have low orbiting satellites. So if I ever broke a leg on a mountaintop, I could be rescued. And I didn't think there was going to be any health dangers to radio frequencies at the time. It was not until decades later that I was on the city council that I found out differently when I had individuals come to me who were being impacted by smart meters. I thought they were ultra sensitive. I didn't think it was much of an issue. And it actually wasn't until a smart meter was put onto my home that within 24 hours, I thought I had a real serious physiological illness that was extremely urgent. And it was not until it was removed that I realized, and then my physiological ailment disappeared immediately, that I realized that these radio frequencies actually can do injuries. So I will leave it at that until we get into more of the details. But I thank you so much again for being here and giving this most important opportunity to speak to you about this matter.
Sarah, how about a little bit about you? How long have you worked on the committee? And were you with another senator before the committee, or?
Sure. No, I have been with the committee for about 3.5 years. I previously worked at the California Energy Commission.
Okay.
So my background is mostly in state agency work. I actually worked for the Department of Public Health before I worked for the Energy Commission.
Okay, great. And
but
so
I did years ago, I did work in the speaker's office, but that was like 15 years ago.
Okay.
So none of the people are in office anymore.
Yeah, it changes a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. And you actually are sitting in Senator Hueso's office. Is that where the committee resides?
Oh, yeah. Normally we would be, I'm at home currently because we're all working remotely due to the pandemic. But yes, normally my office is physically inside Senator Hueso's office.
Okay. And so home for you is on the front lawn of the Capitol, as we can see behind you. Is that where you are?
This is the Senate's official Zoom background.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So for the people who are having trouble choosing between which beautiful vista to have as their like background picture, the Senate wanted to give them a work approved background.
Oh, so one of those top-down decisions. I understand those. Yes.
Yeah. It was, I mean, it is helpful. I mean, we do, the Department of Finance has a similar thing because they've realized there's a real temptation to put like a burning dumpster behind us.
Harry, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Harry Lehman, and what I liked best about you is that as soon as the word experts was mentioned by Paul, there was this slight experience glazing in the eyes. You know, you can tell this is somebody who's been exposed to a lot of pitches. You know.
I worked at the Energy Commission, so please go
Yeah.
ahead with any technical language you would like.
Oh,
I've
I'm
heard
sure
every
you can
acronym
best me,
that's
but
out there.
what I'd like to focus on for a moment is a letter that I'm pecking out to Secretary Contreras that will make this point. And if I get your email address, which I'm sure Paul can give me, I'll get it to you too. But I had something. The current processes through which the legislature is allowing and disallowing citizen participation is clearly in violation of the Bagley-Keene Open Meetings Act of 2004. As is stated in the letter that I'm about to send along, this is now encoded in the government code. And rather than making a fool of myself by attempting to give you the exact citation, I'll just say it's in the letter. And, you know, we were just like shocked. I mean, we're used to going up there. I mentioned, and this was just part of a self-aggrandizing tendency that goes along with my verbosity, but I did mention in this letter that I used to be up there a lot when we were getting George Mosconi's SB 95 through, where Gordon S. Brownell and I were kind of team managers on that. So I just really recognized from that and from the SB 649 fight, which was a return to something I'd long since left behind, how radically different the access is now, where people are not being given any capacity for the expression of substantive data. People are not being given access to meetings by Zoom, which can correct all of this. There's absolutely no COVID justification for this because it's technologically solvable. There's no perimeter security reason for this because, again, it's technologically solvable. And so what's happening here is this entire legislative process is taking place in violation of the due process provisions of the 14th Amendment, in violation of the provisions of assembly of the First Amendment, speech in the First Amendment. This is just a radical departure from citizenry made and citizenry contributed decisional process. And, you know, we're not big, strong corporations like Verizon, who I fight daily or almost daily, but in my work as a lawyer, which is what I do and have done in science and engineering proof cases since, you know, more than 40 years. But this is just what the law says. I mean, and I'm going to send it along in the references in the government code sections, but this ought to get pulled right out of the committee. You know, all we're asking right now is please pull 556. But frankly, the questions I'm raising now and that we are collectively raising amongst many others that, of course, we represent in the thousands, you know, we're just bringing out something that you need to take a look at. And you know what? This is like said as lovingly as it can be, because one of the things that I said to this letter and to the incredibly respectable Secretary Contreras meant sincerely is you guys are facing a bunch of tough problems, man. And I just get it. I mean, I get it. I mean, when I was in public administration school, we were getting lectures from Joe Bodovich. You know, I used to work with in Spur. I worked for I was a Sierra Club National Law intern. I handled all the testimony before the Interior and Insular Affairs Committee, including Interior's testimony for the GGNRA. I mean, this is not my first rodeo, but I've been doing trial law for 40 years since. And I'm just telling you guys, please, you got to take a look at this law, because not because we're able to necessarily, and I hope we can, go to court and intervene. I definitely see the separation of powers issues there, but this seems to me to be far beyond any of that concern at that level. But, you know, it's just a matter of principle. I mean, plus, and I'm going to close with this, in my letter sent on the 14th, what I'm just like wishing and hoping you've seen or will read, you know, one of the things I pointed out there is that every single one of your senators has got the right to decline any bill at all without any other explanation on the grounds that, hey, I don't like it morally. Just that. And right now, we have overwhelming clear evidence from the National Toxicology Program of the United States National Institutes of Health, based on their $25+ million 30-month study, and many other instances, particularly the most recent Brazilian study, the Norway study published in September of 2013, the International Journal of Oncology, all of the work previously submitted by Dr. Galom, which in her letter in August of 2017, in opposition to SB 649, 26 pages, 4 pages of which were annotated letter, 24 pages of which were 360 annotations of clear scientific sources showing the dangers of this radiation. the scientific case is overwhelming. Now, I know that you guys have this conditioned thing from the industry. Oh, we can't talk about health. Well, that's not even true. Health isn't even mentioned in the 1996 Act. It's a fraud. You know, and I could discuss that in more depth than you want to listen to right now. So I'm just hoping you guys will take a real serious look at this, because beyond all the stuff that I'm bringing up now, which is procedural and constitutional and ultimately the cradle of democracy that we don't want to see fall, at the same time, what's really at stake here is people's lives. I mean, this is serious stuff. So please take a close look. And then what my invitation is, look, I am happy to be told that I'm wrong. Clarence Darrow was once approached by a man he didn't like, and the guy didn't like him. And Darrow says, "Why do you keep coming to me? Keep talking to me?" He says, "Well, Darrow, you're the only man I know that'll change his mind when the evidence supports it. That's so rare, I seek you out." And I'm just asking this legislature and its senior staff who really run the show, including you, please just take a look at the data. And if I'm wrong, fine. I am just like Darrow on that point, boy. You can whatever. You can just call me wrong. I'll agree if the facts are there. But the science is just overwhelming now. We shouldn't be hurting people. We shouldn't be hurting anybody. And in addition to which, as Trevor would point out, federal law, and several people, federal law specifically states that the proper dosage of this radiation is supposed to be the minimum amount necessary for the communication purpose involved. I've actually got the citation. We've got the citation several places. I think it's for CCSCF 454 or something. But you know, that's not what's happening here. These people are going wild with money hunger to get. But what I'm saying to you is, think what this is going to affect. Who this is going to affect? People living in congested circumstances are going to get cross irradiated at a multiplicity of direction. This is perfectly just humanitarian, from a humanitarian standpoint, utterly not sustainable. Thank you very much.
Well, that was quite an introduction, but I think you get the idea that if I had to summarize it all here, and I think that Trevor can do a better job than anyone, because he's the one who's designed antennas. Antennas are designed to be, these kinds of communication antennas, 200 feet off the ground and more than 2,500 feet away. And that is because the power they put out kind of weakens as it goes along. And by the time it reaches where people are, it's kind of at that level. It is at the minimum power for the communication desired. That is actually in the Act. It's not an FCC rule. It's actually in the 1934 Telecommunications Act. And it says specifically, it's not a maybe, it's a must. Every licensed radio station, of which a cell tower is, must use the minimum amount of power for the communication desired, which is telecommunication service. Telecommunication service is the making of a phone call. So this whole wireless broadband thing is not supported by the law. It's not necessary. It's not even, you don't get any preemption for it. It is just a lie that the industry keeps telling. And so the answer is, if you go back to the original documents and you go back to the law yourself, it's very, very clear that when antennas get this close to where people live, sleep, work, and play, you are really inviting disaster. And there's no reason for it. No need to have it, because all that same data can come by fiber optic cable, much better, and by coaxial cable, much better, much more securely. And there's easy problems to solve. What you have to do is take the rapacious greed of Crown Castle and Verizon and AT&T and put it to the side and say, we have to balance that rapacious greed against what is needed for the service and what is needed to actually solve the digital divide, because they had created the digital divide on purpose to maximize their profits. This is all well documented. And so they could easily, if you just went ahead and said, hey, utilities, finish your job, you could actually have the digital divide solved tomorrow. It's not hard, okay? Your utility can do it. You extract the money back from the wires company who stole over $16 billion from California. You hand it to your utility and say, please finish the job, because they all agreed to do it back in the 90s. All right, that's what we can do. Trevor, help us out here. What did you write to the FCC? Because here's one thing you told me, Sarah, a couple days ago. You said that the reason we're coming forward with the bill now is because now we have a new FCC order about the small cell deployment order. Came out in September of 2018. And you said that was the reason why we had a new bill. I want to get across to you really clearly. That order is toothless. It is not law. It is a statement of preferences. That is from the top telecom attorney in the United States. I have a legal analysis from April 9th. I will put it into your inboxes right after the call. And he's already put it all out there on the videos, and he gets decisions in federal court about this. So FCC 18-133 is nothing. We need you, please, to be Switzerland. We need you to not put a filter in front of the information that we have in the packet that goes forward to the members. You should have all of our strong arguments right next to all of the authors of the bill's arguments. And ours are supported by fact, law, and substance. And theirs, unfortunately, are not. And so when you actually then put them side by side, if you're intellectually honest, you will understand what is the best choice and what decisions should be made. We went through a very good process in 2017. We do have to give props to the California legislature back then. Okay, we were given time to engage and time to make presentations, and we treated it seriously, and we did excellent work then, and we carried the day in the end. We moved votes. You have to understand, it was 32-8 the first time through for SB 649 through the Senate. Second time through, after Harry got 11 letters on their desk, after they read them, 22-18. We almost beat them in the Senate. All right. And then we go forward and we convince Governor Brown to veto the bill. And it's really for the right reason. It didn't properly balance the needs of local governments and the needs of these billion-dollar. And it's the true today, because there's no difference between now and 4 years ago. That FCC rule or from 2018 is nothing. There's nothing different at the FCC. Okay, so Trevor, tell us a little bit more about antenna design and what have you learned and what did you tell the FCC?
Well, I used to teach antenna design to engineering students. And so when I read the FCC advice that came out last year, yes, I realized that fundamentally the FCC is asking the wrong question. These engineers are making really bad errors. The question should not be how much power is it safe to radiate from a base station. The FCC should be asking how much power is needed to get the job done. And that's what the DC Circuit Court of Appeals said when they ruled against the FCC on the small cells issue by pointing out that the FCC hadn't even defined what a small cell was, and that they were trying to talk about pizza boxes and Wi-Fi routers, yet clearly the amount of power they are intending to pump out of these poles was very much greater than what a Wi-Fi router puts out. You know, the question should be, what do we need to do? And we need to sit down and figure that out. If there are gaps in coverage, if we want to expand the availability of high-speed broadband, then we need to sit down and figure out how to do that. And the best place for that to be figured out is at the local level, because every single situation is different. The thing to remember about radio frequency radiation is that it falls off as a square of the distance. So if you've got somebody who's currently sitting half a mile from the nearest repeater station, which is fairly normal, 3,000 feet, let's say, from round numbers, and you put an antenna 30 feet away at the end of their driveway, then the difference in distance is 30 to 3,000 or 100 to 1. But the signal strength, the radiation goes up by that factor squared. It's 10,000 to 1. And yet they're still putting antennas or intending to put antennas out in the street, which are going to hurt a fraction of the population. We have a number of people in this city who are registered with the city council as electrosensitive. Their doctors have diagnosed them as such. There are proper diagnosis codes for that illness or disability. Code W90.0 exposure to radio frequency radiation. And why these engineers at the FCC and Verizon are making pronouncements on health is unbelievable to me. If you get sick, you go to a doctor. You don't go to an engineer. And yet there is no input whatsoever on this so-called safety issue by doctors in the FCC documents. In fact, they told the bioinitiative that they couldn't even implement a service if they had to make it safe. And I described that in more detail in the 3-page summary that I sent off, that I think Paul has sent.
So I think it's another way of looking at it. This affects all of us, and one of us in different parts of our bodies to different extents. But you cannot. This idea that non-ionizing radiation is mythical is a largely governmentally, industry, whatever, commercially, whatever, propagated mythology. The actual data do not support the position. The actual data actually haven't supported the position. We have a 1972 Navy study where the bibliography is 400 entries. I mean, this has actually been much more, shall we say, swept away than it has been a result of the absence of a database.
We have a lot of smart people here in California, and they figured this all out. And so they've worked it out with their local cities. Okay. They understand there are big forces afoot trying to like shut us down at the federal level, maybe at the state level. But that's why we fought so hard for local control. So we could actually go through the deliberations and the time and the expense to pass reasonably protective ordinances locally. Hey, right now, in Petaluma, California, there will be no small cells in residential zones. That's a very reasonable position to take. And that we have enough geography in the mixed use and commercial zones to enable the new technology to go from there. Because we know these things go long distances. The propaganda says, oh, we are going to come in the public rights of way. It goes down the block 1,000 feet. This is a lie. These things go out tens of miles, maybe 100 miles. Trevor knows he actually did it at almost 600 megahertz back in 1965. And so the answer is, instead of propaganda, instead of just whatever the industry says, you actually should put a great filter in front of that and say, excuse me, we're only going to put things in front of our members that we can verify is true. And we wipe out the propaganda. That's the way to think about this, because there's no reason for them to be swayed by propaganda. But that's what's been going on. And it's been legal since 2012. We shouldn't be doing it. Renette, as the mayor of Nevada City, was able to work for a year and a half, maybe $45,000 in legal fees to actually get to a result for her city. Tell us what you went through having local control over the last 4 years.
It was back in 2017 when I did testify before the assembly regarding SB 649. And I have to be honest, I don't know if you have children or plan on having children. I don't, but I was less concerned about me, and I was more concerned about the children and the unborn, because I know this is going to impact them far more than us adults. And so I put everything I had into it, and I made sure that after a year and a half, and it was a big battle, we had a lot of big attorneys. Verizon was interfering in our wireless ordinance, never had outside interference like that before. And we came to, a bit of a balance, and some protections. That local control is so extraordinarily important. And that was the other thing that was really important to me, was with SB 649, you're going to eviscerate all local authority, right, and oversight. We had the League of California Cities against SB 649. We had the counties. We had tens of thousands of parents and even the children and, teachers. And it just went on and on who were just against us, because we're all about ending the digital divide. We want to, right? But the objective is to make sure that we have a deployment of broadband. We've got that. It's there. And we've now paid over $400 billion to make sure that every business and every home has hardwired broadband to their homes, to their units. That's not happening. That money was taken away, and instead we're getting in return dangerous wireless devices. The local control. Why is it important? Because we have the topography, the geography, right? The gaps in services, the demands, right? The density of population. We know more than anybody else at the local level what our community needs. A one size fits all in a 40 million person state doesn't really serve us. So at this point in time, right now, when so many people and businesses are shuttered and people are stressed, as you know, anxiety ridden. Our health is not that great right now, just from being locked away and not doing well and not being able to speak to our representatives. As a two-time mayor and two-term city council member, I cannot imagine not having my constituents being able to speak to me on a matter that I would consider life or death. And I have to tell you, I do have one of those little EMF readers because I found out I was sensitive. I did not know, but when that smart meter was put in my house a few years ago, I found out, wow, I'm actually sensitive to this. I didn't know that. The irony, because I used to own a cell phone store. Maybe it's my karma. But I have an acoustic meter, and I'll kind of flash around my house every now and then. But I have to tell you, for a few years now, this is quite fascinating. I've been aiming that thing at the sky, and the sky's getting hotter and hotter all the time, just from the satellites alone. In the last 4 years, we did not have the strong signal that we have today. And I have to tell you, I'm looking out over this beautiful English garden that I love. That is my therapy. I go out there and I garden. It's my sanctuary. And I don't have one bee this year, not one honeybee. I used to have mason bees, Russian bees, your typical honeybee. I don't have any. I used to have a whole entire little family of hummingbirds. I'm not seeing them this year. Is it from the satellites? Is it from the saturation of frequencies? I don't know. But at the very least, we have to consider it a possibility. And so who I'm actually speaking for right now and on behalf of today are for those who cannot meet the representative, Sarah. There's thousands of us. And I'm also speaking for the children who right now are sitting in front of these screens day in, day out. I don't know if they're going to be able to have children. I'm going to expect that within 3 to 5 years, you're going to see a huge uptick in childhood leukemias. And at the very least, we need to table any bill that's related to these wireless devices until we can have face-to-face connection and representation and fair and due process of the law. Because what I'm seeing is not democratic and it's not constitutional, and it scares me, because we will not be able to speak to our representatives and make sure that they are doing the best thing, serving the highest good, and also making sure that they're serving their oath of office, which is to protect the constituents from enemies, foreign and domestic. And right now, we're not getting the protection that we deserve. So I'm going to implore you, as a woman, maybe as a mother or a future mother, to please do everything in your power to table this, to set this aside until we're over the crises that we're in and we can actually have the full respect and attention of our representatives.
Let's take a look at the industry right now. They've been installing for 4 years. They don't have a problem. They're making it. They're putting stuff in. They're doing it in ways that local cities can say is okay to do. They're overrunning some cities who decide not to protect their residents. They're not overrunning other cities where they decided to protect their residents. It's all happening. There's nothing that's hurting their business. Okay? This is just a total gift to people who don't need it. Okay? They have to go through the process of talking to the town. That's right. That's what the federal law says. And they have to prove they have a gap in service. That's right. That's what the case law says. And they have to meet local standards. That's right. That's what the law says. What they're looking for is the big exemption at the state level so they don't have to follow the law anymore. This is wrong. We appreciate the time. Wrong. What do we really want? Here's what we want. And we're going to come forward and ask for this. Okay. We need access to every single person on the committee. We actually need to give them good information. We need to do that before they deliberate. That's right. We actually have about 10 or 12 calls into your committee. How many return calls do we have? 1, 2.
Okay.
That's about it. So the whole point is to make it fair. We need to have the time. And you have to give more than 2 minutes of presentation or 3 minutes of presentation. I came up this week. I experienced it. I put it on YouTube. It's laughably wrong. Okay. You can't sit there and say, oh, well, we'll select a 2-minute person to give a presentation. We have no idea how is it that we request to be among the speakers for the 2 minutes on this bill. What do we have to do?
So if you want to request to be one of the primary witnesses in opposition, just send me an email to that effect. And I will send it on to Nydia, our chief consultant, and Melanie, And so what will happen is we will take all the people who've requested to speak in opposition, and they get, opponents get to decide amongst themselves who's going to represent the opposition. And so at this moment, I don't believe we've had, I assume that you will be submitting an email with that request. We don't have yet another entity that has requested to speak in opposition.
We just did. We just did right here, just on the record at 3:53.
Okay. I will let Melanie and Nydia know that you've requested it. So if you send me, the name of the speaker, their job or their position title, who they're representing, and then their phone number and email, I will give that to Melanie and Nydia. What we're having, and I understand somebody has submitted a request for reasonable accommodation to the Senate. So I believe the Senate Secretary is working on that.
Right. We don't think it'll affect this first proceeding because it takes 3 business days for them to react. So we understand that. And I'm the one who's processing that paperwork. And
Okay.
but I am saying to you is we did experience this last time, and we had Trevor Marshall come in and give 3 minutes. We had Harry Lehman come in and give 3 minutes. We had Renette Senham come in and give 3 minutes. We had Paul McGavin come in and give 3 minutes. That's exactly what we would expect this time also. Why is it that we are sitting here going, oh, we got to pick between Harry and Renette? Let's think. Harry's got a lot of expertise that's not the same as Renette. And Renette's got a great point that's not exactly like Trevor's. What is this point that we filter all the people out?
No, in fact, it's actually to make sure that we have enough space so that everybody who has a position can voice their position.
Let me be clear. We are unlimited in space. This is called Zoom software. This can expand to 50 windows. There's no limit.
So I can't speak to what actually the technology that the Senate has contracted for. I know that the members can do Zoom to come into the meeting, but my understanding is that it's actually like a specific call-in system.
In a multi-billion-dollar budget, there's room for Zoom software. It's done in every single city across California.
It's upon adjournment of session. It'll be about a 30-minute wait between session and when our committee starts so that they can disinfect the Senate chamber. This will be the first bill up, so I'm expecting 3 o'clock.
All we want to do is have a fair chance to get some information across, and we're going to need more than the 2 to 4 minutes. It's very clear. Okay. And so when you reduce people to me too, me too, me too, there's no information being communicated. We had an 8-page letter from Harry Lehman, which I consider to be probably the best piece written on this in the last 5 years. You received this on Wednesday. I am so hopeful that you put that front and center in the packet that goes to all the members. What I experienced last time from the committee was we brought all the stuff to the committee and it all got filtered out. It did not go forward. And so my question is, how is it that we as the public have transparency and visibility into what makes it through your filter to go to the members? Because we have given you excellent information. Harry's got an 8-pager. I got a 7-pager. Trevor's got a 3-pager. I mean, we got some good stuff in here, but if it never sees the light of day, you see, we can only lead the horse to the trough. We can't force him to drink. We can't force them to read the 8-page letter, but at least it needs to be in the trough.
So everything that's submitted on bills goes into the official bill file. What we give to the senators is just our analysis. There's no, unless there is a handout that one of the primary witnesses wants to give to the senators as part of their presentation. So if yes, I understand that normally in a process where you were physically there in person, you would have a handout and you would give it to the members, on the dais. I will talk to Nydia about, what if you guys have a handout that you would like to have given to people if you're a primary witness in opposition, whether we can send that out. We have not, thus far that hasn't been a thing because people have been sending it directly to the offices, to the members on our committee's offices. Mm-hmm. But I can talk to her about whether that's something that we can help facilitate.
Okay. Well, all we're looking for is a little paragraph in your summary that says, members, this letter by Mr. Harry Lehman is significant and worth your time.
So I don't advocate for any particular study. I do have a paragraph where I discuss the fact that there is concerns about the health and safety, and discuss some of those concerns, in part because some of the concerns are about physical health, some of them are about environmental issues, some of them are concerns about fire and public safety. And so we try to kind of summarize what everyone's concerns are.
Mhm.
And that is reflected.
One thing I have to make clear to you, okay, the legal notice, okay, occurs when the notice is given to the entity involved. Now, as it was specifically described therein, legal notice of the factors herein discussed and many others was specifically enumerated as the purpose when this was successfully faxed to the committee on the 14th at 11:08. And the same is true of the notice letter, which is now in your email as well. Excuse me. You know, these are notice documents. So I would caution you to be very circumspect about making a subjective choice to withhold the giving of a legal notice document to the constituency of the committee, because it has legal consequences. And, you know, making some on the fly decision that's, gee, I should tell them, maybe I shouldn't tell them. I think at least you should tell them that they've been given legal notice and the lawyers better look at this, because, you know, it's going to have the notice effect whether they actually look at it or not. They are charged with knowledge.
I'm going to take a moment to talk about some procedural things that you may not be apparent right now.
Okay.
So, and it's not to do with the way the committee is being conducted. I will talk to Nydia about providing handout, whether the committee staff can provide handouts electronically. But so in the committee, in the history of the bill, if you look it up on LegInfo, it may look like it is single referred to just our committee right now. However, when Senator Dodd did the most recent set of amendments to the bill, it led to the Senate Governance and Finance Committee, which does local government issues, requesting the bill. The bill's current text is actually much more closely, we hear every issue on telecommunications and utilities issues, but the issues of local government and local government control are really within their jurisdiction. So they have requested the bill. Should the bill have enough votes to pass out of our committee, the action would be to refer it to Senate Rules, and then Senate Rules would refer it to Senate Governance and Finance so that they can hear it. And they're planning on, and you may have, if you were looking at all of the committee schedules on the Senate webpage, you may have noticed that they're going to have a hearing next week on the 22nd, and they're going to hear this bill on that. Or my understanding is they plan on hearing it on that.
Oh, so they've already set the date for the 22nd.
Rules that's going to hear it, or is this Government Affairs that's going to hear it?
Governance and Finance will hear it. Rules.
Look, this is an end run. Come on.
No. We're hearing the bill. It has to go to Rules, and Rules will refer it to Governance and Finance.
In 2017, the first committee heard it on April 4th. The second committee heard it on April 26th. And that is a reasonable pace for a bill. We can go back to exactly how they ran SB 649 and compare that to, oh, we're going to hear a bill on April 19th and then come right back on the 22nd with the second committee. I'm telling you, this is not. Here's what I'm saying to everyone. In matters of child endangerment and in matters where we actually are physically hurting people with policy, all of the responsibility falls on everyone's desk.
Also in violation in a separate way that hasn't been mentioned here of the Bagley-Keene Open Meetings Act, because of the notice requirements there and elsewhere in the government code. I mean, it's clearly inadequate notice. And I mean,
here's what we're going to ask right now is, can you please have the bill's author call their boss, Crown Castle, and tell them we're going to build in another 2 weeks here?
We're trying for the analysis to reflect the concerns of the various stakeholders. We do have to summarize them to make sure that, you know, we have certain formatting requirements we have to follow with the analyses. But we do expect a robust discussion. If you will please just send me who is the speaker, the organization that they're representing.
I will right away. I do have one request, though. Here it is. And it's unfortunate that this is what we have to deal with on a daily basis. And it's not your doing, but it's just something that's for real. Okay. We have this funny thing that happened in the Second Circuit back in 1999. We had a judge that actually equated environmental effects with health concerns. And effects are things with evidence, and concerns are kind of worries. The problem is the wires industry takes that to the bank. And what they really say every day is if you ever call what we're talking about health concerns, they will point to that decision to say that is not substantial information. This is a little propaganda trick they play. So please, if you can actually, instead of saying health concern, could you please say health effects? In fact, you could use the language from the 2019 California Supreme Court decision in San Francisco versus T-Mobile, where they say incommoding the public includes negative health consequences. Okay, that's their phrase. Feel free to use that one too. But when you retreat all the way back to say health concern, that actually puts us at very much a disadvantage, unfortunately, and there's no need to have to do it. So maybe we can ask you to at least characterize a lot of what we say accurately by calling them negative health consequences or health effects with evidence, because we have evidence.
Or direct injuries, because there's nothing in the 1996 Act that authorized direct injuries to the citizenry.
But if you come back and say health concerns, then we know exactly what is going on, because that is happening
about this issue.
Here.
They frequently hear about the concerns about the health effects.
I know it's a very popular thing people talk about, and they always talk about with the word concerns attached to it. And what we are telling you is we haven't brought you any single concern today. We have brought you only substance, fact, and law, and we have evidence to back it all up. So none of that qualifies as a concern per that decision in 1999 Oyster Bay. What they were talking about was the lack of substantial evidence, and they labeled that lack of substantial evidence as a concern. We are not doing that. We are putting in your record this fact that there is a small cell in Sacramento, California that is literally 60 feet from a second-story bedroom window. We measured it properly. It's 25 million times higher than it needs to provide service. That made those little girls sick, and they have a medical diagnosis. That is not a concern. That is fact.
To characterize your worry about it. Not
There's
that
no worry.
A...
Did I say worry here? I said no worry whatsoever.
What you are bringing up as an issue this is what the stakeholders are concerned about.
No, we're not concerned about it. We are showing you evidence of actual harm. Okay. So listen, thank you very much. And I certainly appreciate the time. You have to understand that this is a very serious matter for a number of us who spent a lot of money and time to save our homes and our lives and our offices where we work. And we've done an excellent job of working with our communities to get us the protections that we absolutely need and deserve by having local control. Okay? So all we're asking you to do is please characterize our issues as we just talked about, not as worries or concerns, but as actual harms from evidence. Now we're talking about what is real. That's what we're asking. Okay?
Because there is no dispute. I mean, people are being made ill. There is a diagnosis code. It's recognized by the ADA. We have hundreds of people in my local vicinity. Many of them have had their doctors write letters to the local council.
Harry, do you want to say goodbye?
Well, no, there's a semantic point that has not been adequately litigated, but someday soon will be. The term environment, when used historically in the Judeo-Christian tradition of the United States, has, unlike the Alan Watts viewpoint, which I'm fairly familiar with, been that humankind was in the environment, but not of. This is really quite clear. And if you look into the dictionary definitions from 1995, 96, it's phrased that way. So that semantic point, I think, is going to get better. Wish you well, and I know that you'll do the best you can. So
no, you've got a very tough job, and you have to understand that we are bringing you real truth. Real truth in the end matters. And so we have really good evidence and truth in your record right now. And we really hope it's treated with respect. Thank you. That's great.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.